to YouTube later. Okay, there we go. This is an ancestor that of my husband's, and I just wanted to start real quick with the reasons why I decided to start researching Benjamin and why he might be a good person to start researching. And if you look at his profile, you'll notice that there's a lot of incomplete information. All they have is a birth month and a year. And it also, we have no death information, no burial information. We only have 2 sources and 1 memory. So this person hasn't had a whole lot of thorough research, but he has enough information on his family that might help us learn more about him. So when you are trying to find an ancestor to start with, keep an eye out for people who have few sources and memories and incomplete information, because that is a great place to start. You'll notice that he has his parents listed and he's got several siblings listed. So there has been some research done on this family, but he has just been a little bit neglected. So we're going to pay attention to Benjamin today, and we're going to try and see if we can't find some vital records and some census records, and maybe some additional records as well. What we're going to do first is we're going to start looking at what we have already. Before we look at all the research helps, before we search all the records, we want to see what other people have already done. So I'm going to go to the sources. We're going to see what we already have. So we have 2 census records that he is in. We have one when he was a baby in 1900, right, the year when he was born, and we have one when he's about 10 years old. So we know that he was at least 10 years old. He died after 1910, so that's plenty of information to go on to try and find death information. And also, potentially, he may have lived into adulthood, and we could potentially find a wife and children for him that he might like to be sealed to someday. And so there's some potential family history work and temple work to be done here. Let's also take a look real quick at the memories and see what we have. So we have a photo. If we click on it, you'll see that Benjamin's already tagged in this. So we're going to go ahead and let's go ahead and create a profile picture for him. If you just click the little portrait, the little blue man right here, and you click it and you say add a portrait, you can choose from the attached photos, and you can just go ahead and find the person that your ancestor was, and you can just save that portrait and it will show up on his profile of him having a picture. And I just like to do that because I like to see people's faces. But let's go back to the sources. And remember that one of the most important things to do when you are doing your family history research is to not just look at the index, but also to look at the image. So let's see what the census has to say and if it can give us any information. But before we start looking at all the sources and stuff, I want to show you what I do to keep track of my research so I don't duplicate it. And I kind of showed this last time, but what I do is I like to create a little checklist of sorts in the in Google Sheets or Excel. Google Sheets is really easy, it's free, and you can download it and you don't have to keep it on your computer storage if you don't need. But what I'll do is for every family that I'm researching, I will go ahead and write all the names of everybody in the family. And today we're just going to research one person. But let's go ahead and put his name, Benjamin H. Patterson. And I will go ahead and mark as I'm researching the things that I find. And I will also go ahead and highlight the things that I don't need or do need. So if we look at Benjamin, we know he was born in 1900. We don't know when he died. So we know that he's not going to show up in any of these censuses from 1790 to 1880. So I'm going to go ahead and mark those a different color, so I don't have to do the research there. Let's see, he was born in Arkansas, so we know that he's not going to have any naturalization or immigration records, so I'm going to go ahead and mark that too. And then the rest of it are all records that I could potentially find for him. So I'm going to want to try and find birth, marriage, death, burial. Here's all the censuses in the United States. And then some additional records I can search as well. And then when I'm complete with somebody, I can go ahead and highlight the whole thing. And then I can move on. But I can see what I have and what I don't have. And then I have a little key right here that says if I mark it as an X, that means that I have a source, that I have a birth record or a death record, a direct source. And then if I do an asterisk, that usually means that I have a source that supports that information. So that's just how I do it. And that might work for some of you, that might not work for some of you, but I do encourage you to keep track of what you're doing. And this little research tracker is really helpful just so you don't repeat, and you can kind of stay on track with what you need to do and whether or not somebody's research is complete. So let's go ahead and look at those sources real quick. So we can go ahead and mark that we have the 1900 and the 1910 census in there. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little X right there, X right there. And that just is showing that I have those records, they're attached to him. I don't need to search for them, but I still want to look at them. So let's go ahead and look at the image of this census and see what information we can find. If we look at Benjamin's profile picture, we know that he was, or his profile, we can see that he was born in May 1900, and there's two sources that support that information. Let's see what the census has to say. So before we start looking at the name and things, I'm going to go ahead and look at this very top portion, and I'm going to see where the census was taken and what day it was taken. So we have Omaha Township in Arkansas, Boone County, and it was taken on the 12th of June, 1900. So I'm going to pay attention to that, June 12th. I'm going to scroll down, we'll see if we can find Benjamin Patterson. Okay, so here we go. Here's the Patterson family right here. And we have his parents, and we have their birth years and birth and marriage information. We have, this is good information, Sarah, his mother, has had 8 children, and 8 of them are still living. We have information about their birth. Well, let's look at Benjamin. So in this census, he's going by Benny. So that's something I might want to note. If maybe he's going by Benny in some of the records. He's the son of Benjamin and Sarah. He is male, and it says right here that he was born in June, and then it's crossed out and it says May. So he could be born in June or May. This says May. His tree says May. So we're going to go ahead and pay attention to that. It says he was born in the year 1900. That makes sense, and that he's 0 out of 12 months old. So that means that Benjamin was less than a month old in this census. So that means he was born sometime between May 12th and June 12th. And the census says in May, so probably between May 12th and May 31st. So that helps narrow down considerably when his birthday was. He's single, obviously. He's a newborn. He was born in Arkansas. His father was born in Missouri, and his mother was also born in Arkansas. And then we have no other information there. So the most important information we have right here is that Benjamin on June 12th of 1900, he was less than a month old. So let's go over there and let's make sure that that makes sense. So it says May in 1900. And it says he was born in Boone, Arkansas. So if you go back to the census, you can see that the census was taken in Boone County, Arkansas. So that makes sense. There's also, the family was found in Omaha Township. So it's probably safe to say that Benjamin was born in Omaha. Now, we don't know that for sure. He could have been born in a different city, but if he's less than a month old and he's showing up in Omaha, then I would go ahead and say that he probably was born in Omaha. But we can't go ahead. I'm not going to put that as his birth information because I don't have a birth record that says that specifically. For example, my own son, he was born in Provo, Utah, and then 10 days after he was born, we flew out here to St. Louis. So anybody looking at our census information or our information would probably assume that he was born in St. Louis, and that wouldn't be a completely incorrect assumption, except that he was born in Utah and he moved when he was only 10 days old. So that's not very typical, but it did happen. So I'm not going to change his birth date, but I am going to take note that the family lived in that place. Let's also check the 1910 census and see if there's any other information. Okay, so we have a different state. So that's good to note. They live in Otoe Township in Lincoln County, Oklahoma. And this is taken on the 12th of May, 1910. So if we look at the Pattersons, and they're this first family here, let's try and find our Benjamin. Here's Benjamin. So he's listed as Benjamin in this one. It's spelled kind of funky, but it's still Benjamin, and he's not Benny, so that's important to note. It says he was male, he was white, he was 9 years old on May 12th. So this is indexed as him being born in 1911, but really he was born in 1910, and it just was really close to his birthday. So he was still 9 years old when the census was taken. He's single. He was born in Arkansas. His parents were born. He speaks English. He doesn't work yet. That makes sense. He's only 9. He can read, but he can't write. And he has attended school. So there's not a whole lot of information there that really helps us find Benjamin in other records yet. But we can use these 2 censuses as birth information because it gives us a year and an age. And we can also make note that the family moved to Oklahoma when he was young. So we're going to look for him in records in Oklahoma, not necessarily Arkansas for his adulthood. So now that I've looked at what's already been done and I've marked it on my research tracker that we have the 1900 and the 1910 census, now I need to think about what I need to find and what I need to do. So the best way to do that is to work from what you know to the unknown. So we know only a few things about Benjamin, but we know plenty to track him. So we know his parents, we know his 12 siblings, that's plenty of people to connect himself to. We know his birth month and year and place. And we also know that he lived in Arkansas and in Oklahoma. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look at the Family Search Wiki, this search research wiki, and I'm going to look and see what records I can expect to find in 1900s, early 1900s for Arkansas and for Oklahoma. So I can go ahead and save myself some work. So I'm going to go ahead and look at Arkansas first, because that's where he was born. And if you remember, they've sorted it by record types, and they've also sorted it by county. And we'll look at county, but let's start first with vital records. I want to see what vital records are available in Arkansas. So we have Arkansas vital records, and we have all of these births, marriages, deaths. So I have plenty of records to look at. And in Arkansas, it says index only for births and christenings from 1812 to 1965. So that's something I'm going to want to look at. Sevier County, that's not where my ancestor was from, and it was after he was born, so this is not going to be something I need to look at. But this first record set is something I might want to look at. If I scroll down, I can learn more about birth records in Arkansas. We know that there are a couple taken in the 1880s to 1890s. Statewide birth records in Arkansas did not begin until 1914. That was when it was legislated, apparently. So the likelihood of my ancestor, who was born in 1900, having a birth record is pretty low, but I can still check just in case. But it's okay if I don't find a birth record. So that's something to pay attention to. Now let's go back to the Arkansas genealogy. I can also check this button right here, this blue button, and this is on any page about a place, this online genealogy records. If I click it, it'll tell me here are all the records we have for Arkansas that are online for you to access. You don't have to look in the catalog for these. And it'll tell you a little bit about it, and it'll also tell you if you need a subscription to use it. So the little dollar sign means you need a subscription. Those are usually Ancestry or Find My Past. But we only have the 2 record sets for births, which is what it said earlier. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to take note of that. And then I'm also going to check Boone County. I want to learn more about Boone County and what they have specifically, because we know that Benjamin was born in Boone County. So Boone County is right up here. You can also look at it alphabetically if you don't know where a county is on the map, but you could click on it. We know that it was organized in 1869. This is also important to note, the neighboring counties right here. Sometimes your ancestor will show up in a different county. This county in Arkansas happens to be really close to Missouri, so he might even show up in Missouri records. So just pay attention to like the places near your ancestor, because they might show up there in a census or in other records, and they might be very, very close, but it seems farther away than it really is. It says there is no known history of record loss, and these are the beginning dates for all the major records in this county. So birth is 1914, and so I can go ahead and expect not to find any birth records in Arkansas for my ancestor. So let's move on. But that's an example of what I do when I'm trying to learn more about a place my ancestor lived, and it saves me a lot of work, because now I know I'm probably not going to find a birth record, so I'm going to spend my time on other records first and then see if I can find a birth record later, rather than spending hours and hours trying to find a birth record that doesn't exist. So be sure to use that Family Search Wiki. It's a really useful tool, and they have those wiki pages for almost every county in America. So definitely take the time to look at it. It'll save you more time in the long run. So another thing we know about Benjamin is that he shows up in censuses. So I don't know when he died, so I can't really look for a death record, even though that's a great place to start. But I do know that he showed up in censuses, so maybe I will start with censuses. We also have these research helps on the side here that could help us save some time. So I'm going to go ahead and look at the research help, and it says it's a death index in California. So that's pretty far away from Arkansas and Oklahoma. So maybe it's my ancestor, but maybe it's not. It says Benjamin H. Patterson. He died in August of 1960 in San Diego, and it says he was born on June 1st, 1900. So that is very close to May 1900. So maybe his real birthday is June 1st. And that census taker who wrote down June and crossed it out and wrote May, maybe he was wrong. Maybe his birthday really was June 1st, but that's consistent. It also says his birthplace is Arkansas, that he's male. So this is all matching up so far. And then we have mother's name is Curry. So that doesn't make a whole lot of sense until we look at his mother down here. It says Sarah Frances Carey. So I could see how somebody could confuse or misspell Carrie to be Curry. That makes sense to me. So this is a pretty good match, but until we find a record that proves that our Benjamin from Boone, Arkansas moved to San Diego, we can't just assume that Benjamin Patterson, which is not a super uncommon name, is the same as our Benjamin Patterson from Arkansas and Oklahoma. So that's important to, before you attach and review and just automatically assume that some of these records are your ancestor just because the family search algorithm popped it up, make sure to find more support for the information that doesn't quite make sense. So before I attach that, I'm going to try and find a little more information to prove that that is our guy. So if you remember, this function right here on the right underneath the research help, the search records, it will take all the information that you have for your person and it will search these websites for them. So I'm going to go ahead and use family search, and I'm also going to use ancestry today. And that's what I usually use to do my research. And I'm just going to look at the suggested records that they have, what they think my ancestor might be in. And I'm just going to see what information I can find. So we have that death index that we looked at earlier. We have these censuses that are already attached to our ancestor here, and it will tell you it's attached on that little family tree symbol right there, that pedigree symbol. We scroll down. We also have Benjamin H. Patterson in the public records living in 1996 in Hampton, Arkansas. So that could be him. He could be 96 years old living in Arkansas, but there's no proof of that yet, so I'm not going to attach that. Then we have a Benjamin Patterson attached to a different person in a different family tree. We have a Benjamin Patterson in San Diego, born in 1901, in the 1940 census, but it doesn't have any of his parents or siblings in this census, so we can't be totally sure that this is our Benjamin because it just has wife and children. But we'll just go ahead and take note of this right here because it could be our ancestor, but we just have to make sure before we go ahead and attach it. So let's go ahead and take a look at Ancestry and see what they have. And they have largely the same thing. They also have a find a grave. Let's go ahead and look at these. So a lot of the same records that Family Search has. So let's look at our research tracker and see what we need to find. So we need to find our vital records. We need birth, marriage, death, and burial. You need to complete the censuses. So we need to find the 1920, 1930, and 1940 census. Sorry about that. Let's go ahead and look at the family search. Let's try and let's see if they can find him in the 1920 census. Now I'm going to go ahead and just click this little collections right here. And then I can see all the records that they have that they think my ancestor might be in. So here's the 1920 census right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click that and see if they can't find him in it. So we have a William Patterson, a Wade Patterson, and we have Daisy and Benny. So Benny, that could be our person. They look pretty similar, but they live in Tennessee. So none of these look like a really great match here. So I'm going to go ahead and move on and see if I can't find any other records that might be my person. So I'm just going to take a note that I haven't found anyone in the 1920 real quick. I'll put like a little question mark, like it hasn't shown up yet. but I still need to do more research. I need to look a little harder before I just give up. Let's look at on Ancestry and let's see some of their functions real quick. Let's click on this Find a Grave right here. So we have, this is a burial record and it's on a different website, so I'm going to want to check it. But it says the Benjamin Howard Patterson. So that let's look at our Benjamin and let's see. We have Benjamin H. Patterson. So that matches. We also have born June 1st, which is also really close to Benjamin's birthday. Same death date as that California death record and same place. So that's all good. And it lists his parents as Benjamin James and Sarah Frances Patterson. So let's look at his parents and see if that's a match. So we have Benjamin James Patterson and Sarah Frances. So this looks like it's our person. So let's go to the website and let's look at it a little farther. Okay, so something to note is that there is no picture of the gravesite. So we don't know where they're getting this information from. Whoever uploaded this information didn't provide the source for it. So that's important to note. I can't just go ahead and assume that all their research for this death and burial information is well sourced. The information is only as good as the person putting it in. So I can't assume that all of this is correct. They may have assumed from other records that it was correct and it could be incorrect. So, but it is evidence that this Benjamin Howard Patterson is my ancestor and that he lived and died in San Diego at some point. It also lists all his siblings right here, so that is good. So that Find a Grave, it's a great burial source, but I haven't proved that this Benjamin is the same person quite yet. So I'm going to go ahead and keep that tab open. I'm going to go ahead and mark on my research tracker that we have some burial information that's indirect so far, but that it might be my ancestors. So let's go ahead and go back to the ancestry results. And if you look on the side here on the right, Ancestry has this cool feature. It's really similar to Family Search's suggested records, but its algorithm is just a little bit more, it's a little bit stronger than Family Search's right now. So there's a lot more connections typically. So I like to look at these suggested records and see if there's anything that might help me figure it out. So I don't see any 1920 census. We have 1940, 1900, 1910, 1930, but there's no 1920 yet. So in 1920, Benjamin would have been about 19 or 20 years old. So that could be in his parents' household, or it could be his own household that's right there on the edge. So let's see if I can't find him in his parents' censuses. Let's look on those parents' pages. If we go to their sources, this is Benjamin's father, who's also named Benjamin. And we see he was found in the 1920 census. Let's see if Benjamin Jr. is listed in there. So we have his parents, and then we have his younger siblings. So Benjamin Jr. is not in his parents' household in 1920. So we need to look for him by himself, but he might be living nearby. So let's look in Oklahoma. We'll want to pay attention to Oklahoma. So I'm going to go ahead and this is the 1920 census that we tried to find. And sometimes, like I said, the census taker messes up with information all the time. So maybe the name is misspelled, maybe his age is wrong, and so it's just not showing. So I'm going to go ahead and just play around with the search function here and see if I can't find him in a different way. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the birth years on the search and see if I can't find all the Benjamin Pattersons who were born in Arkansas. And it doesn't look like anything is really showing up that's going to match my person. So I'm going to go ahead and delete all the birth information. And I'm going to look in Oklahoma. I'm going to go ahead and search in residence place for Oklahoma because that's where his family was. And that's where he was in 1910. And we can see if maybe that will help. And we have a Benjamin H. Patterson living in Oklahoma, but he's only 6 years old in this census. That doesn't make much sense. So I don't think that's our person if we want to look closer. Yeah, that doesn't look like our person, and it looks like his mother's name was Hallie, and that doesn't match us. So that's probably not him. We also have a Benjamin H. Patterson married to a Mabel. That could be him, but he would have been older, 28. He would have been 28 in this census, and that's a little too old for us. He was also born in Oklahoma, and we know our guy was born in Arkansas, so I don't think that's our person. And if you just look through, you'll notice that there's really just not a great match for our person here. So I'm going to go ahead and just I'm going to move on from the 1920 census, and I'm going to see if we can't find anything else that could help us. So I'm going to go back to that ancestry page. And I'm just going to see what records they have right here on the side that might help me. So we have a 1940. We have the 1900 and 1910, which we already have. We have a U.S. Social Security Claims Index. Now that functions as a death record. We have another death index. And then we have a World War II draft card. So let's look at that. He would have been pretty old in World War II time. He would have been about 40. But that doesn't mean that he didn't have a draft card. So let's go ahead and look at what this has to say. We have a Benjamin Howard Patterson. That matches what we know. We have age 41. And he was born on June 1st, 1900. That matches. And he was born in Boone, Arkansas, and he lives in San Diego. So here is a record that places this Benjamin in Boone County and in San Diego. It also says his next of kin is W.J. Patterson. And let's look at the image just to make sure there's not any other information there. It says he was born in Boone County, Arkansas. We have Benjamin Howard Patterson and William J. Patterson in Lakeside, California. To go to the next page and you can see more about his complexion and his height and stuff. Some scars, so that's kind of cool information. But this is what's going to really help us. So the Boone County, Arkansas, and the W.J. Patterson. So let's look on his family tree and see if we can't find a W.J. Patterson right here. We know he was born in Boone County. Oh, this is his dad. Let's go back to our Benjamin H. There's Benjamin. Okay. So we know he was born in Boone County. And let's see. So we have in his siblings, we have a W.J. William Jefferson Patterson. Perfect. So I'm going to look at William and I want to see if he lived in, this record was taken in 1940s. I want to see if he lived in Lakeside, California or San Diego at the same time. So we have William Jefferson. Let's see his sources. Go to the 1940 census. And it says he lived in San Diego, California. So this looks like a perfect match to me. So what I can do is family search, I don't think has the World War II draft cards on there anymore. I think those are by ancestry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this link right here and I'm going to add it to our Benjamin under his sources, I'm going to go to sources, and I can add a source myself. And I'm going to copy that link right there. Let's see, this record was taken in, let's see what day this was written. February 15th, 1942. So I'll go 1942, and the title of this record is World War II draft cards. I'm going to copy that right there. And I'll go down here and it says the source citation. I'm going to copy that citation and put that right there. And I'm going to tag all the information that it helps support. So it supports his name and gender and birth. And that's all that it supports. So I'm going to save that. And then now somebody can go ahead and click that. And if they have an Ancestry subscription, they can see that even though it's not attached on Family Search. So don't be afraid to add those sources. In fact, please do add any sources you find, even if it's on a different website. So I'm going to update his information with that. And we're going to go ahead and standardize some of this stuff. So let's change his name to his full name. This full name says Benjamin Howard Patterson, and that's only going to help us find him in more records. So Benjamin Howard Patterson, and the reason this information is correct, I'm going to say World War II draft card, so they know where I got that. And then his birth, I'm going to go ahead and edit that. It's saying that in this draft card, it's saying June 1st, and it's also showing that in other records, so I can go ahead and put that there. I'm going to change it to June 1st, and he was born in Boone County, Arkansas. I'm going to save that. Oops. I say World War II draft card. I'm going to save. And then now we know that he lived in San Diego in 1942. So he's probably in San Diego in the 1940 census, and it's safe to attach this death record now. Now we have proof that he lived in San Diego, and that's going to help us too. So on this research help right here, I'm just going to go review and attach. And I'm going to add this information by pressing this replace right here. It says, and I'm going to go ahead and make sure that that standardized date is accepted. You want to make sure that all the green check marks are in place before you attach it. I'm going to say the reason to attach the source is World War II draft card places him in San Diego after 1942. I'm going to attach that. I can go ahead and attach it to his mom as well, even though it's not super useful for her genealogically, but I'm going to go ahead and attach that. I'm going to look at the record and notice that it's an index only. There is no image available, and that's because of privacy laws. And so there's no more information to find from that. But then when I go back to his page and I refresh it, now I have birth information, I have death information, I have 4 sources, and I have all these research help suggestions now, all because I entered in that, because that information was entered in now. So I'm going to go to my research tracker and I'm going to go ahead and say I have a death record now. I have a death record, and I have a death record and not just an indirect source. And then I also have a military record. So I'm going to go ahead and put that there's one military record. There might be multiples, so that's why I'm not going to put an X. But I have one military record. I have that draft card. I have a death record, and then I have these censuses. So let's go ahead and see if there's any more information I can find for Benjamin Howard Patterson just based on these research helps. So I'm going to show all of them. And now that we have proof that he lived in San Diego, that really is going to help us open up the information. And a good, remember to work from what you know to what you don't know. And to try and work your way backwards in time, start with years that are closer to you in time, and you'll have an easier time finding some of these older records. If you look at all these records, we have Benny Patterson, son of B.J. Patterson, which matches Benjamin James Patterson, and it's a school record, and it lists his birthday consistently as June 1st, so that's really helpful. Those, I'm not going to go ahead and review and attach all of those right now because they're all pretty much the same, but I do want to go through those, and I do want to make sure that they match my ancestor. We also have another draft card. Let's look at this because we can't find him in the 1920 census. This might help us find him because it's really close to 1920. This is 1918. So let's go ahead and review this record. Now, before I attach it, I want to look at the record and I want to see the image. So we have right here, we have Benny Howard Patterson living in Sparks, Oklahoma. He was born June 1st, 1900. He's 18 years old. He doesn't have any information about where he was born, except that he is a U.S. citizen. He's native born. And then he's a farmer, and he's employed by himself. Now this right here, this nearest relative, maybe this will help me. It says D-O, and there's a little R subscript or superscript T-H. So Dorth Patterson, I would go ahead and guess that that is Dorothy. Now, if you look at his family, I don't think he has any siblings named Dorothy. Let's see. Whoops. So we have Dora and Cora. That's creative. Rachel, Mary, and a baby girl. So it could be Dora, but that's pretty clearly says Dorth right there. So maybe this is his wife. If he's 18, it's possible that he's married. And we know that he's not living with his parents in the 1920 census. So in 1918, when this was taken, we know that he lived in Sparks, Lincoln, Nebraska. So maybe I'll look in there. So I'm going to go ahead and attach that. All the information seems to match pretty well. And now we have another military record. So I'm going to go to my research tracker, and I'm going to go over to my military section, and I'm going to put 2. He's got 2 military records now. Now if we refresh, we have 5 sources. We still have all those Oklahoma school records, but now I want to find a little bit more about from those census and vital records. Remember, those are the most important records to find for a person. So let's go ahead and try and find him in a census record. Let's look for him in the we looked for them in the 1920 and he wasn't showing up. So let's maybe we can go ahead and look in Sparks, Oklahoma, or we can go ahead and look at maybe a census record in San Diego, closer to the time of that World War II draft record. Let's see what Family Search has. We're going to search the records again on that side right there. And go to collections right here on the top. We're going to try and sort. So let's look at this 1920 and see if we can't narrow it down again. I'm going to go ahead and remove birthplace and death place and just put in residence. Let's go Sparks, Oklahoma, and see if he shows up in there. So we have Lincoln County, we have Howard Patterson, and that doesn't seem to match very well. So I'm going to go ahead and just put that to the side, and now let's see if we can't find him in the 1940 census, because that's another record we have him close to. So if you remember in the World War II draft record, that was taken in 1942, and he's living in San Diego. So we can expect to see Benjamin probably in San Diego. He could be anywhere, but let's just look for him in San Diego and see if we can't find any information. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that Sparks, Oklahoma, and I'm going to try again. Okay, so we have plenty of Benjamin Pattersons here and Howard Pattersons. Now, that I don't think he's going by Howard Patterson, but let's go residence in 1940. Let's say San Diego. Okay, so we have Benjamin L. Patterson, born in 1934, so that's way too young. And then we have Benjamin Patterson, born in Arkansas, living in San Diego, with a Dorothy Patterson, and all these children. So if you remember in that World War I draft record, we had a Dorth Patterson that was his nearest family, his next of kin that he listed. So this looks like it's a pretty solid lead right here. So let's look at the image and let's see what it has to say. Well, the index says he lives in San Diego in 1940. He lived in 1935. He lived in Montague, Texas. So that's something to look at. He's 39, so he was born in 1901 or 1900. And he was born in Arkansas. So, and here is his whole family right here. So he's got plenty of, there's lots of children in here. So let's scroll in right here. We've got Benjamin Patterson. He lives on El Cajon Street. This is his house number. It says that this is the 22nd family. They rent their house. Let's see what that says. Value of home. And then he does not own a radio. Let's see, Benjamin Patterson. He's the head of house. He's male. He's white. What does that say? So there's a note right here that says that they're missing a block right there. Let's see. The highest level of education he had was 8th grade. He was born in Arkansas. He lived in Bowie, Texas. Let's see, what does that say? He lives on a farm. Yeah, let's see. Was this person at work for the 52 weeks in the year? Yes. Or 40 works. Okay, so 40 weeks in the year. He was a contractor, a cement contractor. Okay, so if we look at that draft card, let's see what his occupation said. It said Acme Truck Company. So that could be a cement contractor. So that's all good information. And then we have Dorothy, who is also born in, she was born in Missouri. Then we have all of these children right here. We have his daughter Bernice. We have Dalton Patterson, Viva and Edna, Lee and Bessie. And then we have some grandchildren. So it looks like a good match, but I haven't had any proof that he is married to Dorothy besides that World War I draft card. So that would be what I would do next. Is I'm going to try and find a like a marriage record for Benjamin and Dorothy. And I'm going to look in either Texas or California or Oklahoma or Arkansas, and I'm going to try and find that vital record. So if I go to my research tracker, I know we're running out of time now. If I go to my research tracker, I can say, you know, this is what I want to research next. I have to take a break now. I have to stop. So I want to make sure that I research marriage next. So I'll go ahead and highlight that. And I say, I think I have him in the 1940s. So I'm just going to go ahead and put like a little star there. Like, I think I found him, but I'm not sure. So I haven't attached it yet. But you can also, on Google Sheets, you can add comments and stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and add a comment. And I'm just going to link that 1940 census so I don't lose it. I'm right there. So now when I want to look at it, I can just hover over it and I can click that link. So when I look at what I've done today, it doesn't look like a whole lot. But what I have done is I know his full name is Benjamin Howard Patterson. I found a death record. I have some records that I think he's in that I need to attach, and I have some military. So if we look at his profile, we have a lot more information than we began with, and we have a lot more information to go on. And soon we will hopefully prove that he has a wife and several children that he needs to be sealed to. So we're going to go ahead and take a break from that now, and we'll finish off some more research next week before we move on to our next lesson, because there's just a few more things I wanted to cover before we moved on from that. But just a couple of tips real quick before we end. When you are picking an ancestor, remember what we did today. Remember that it's good to begin with somebody who has few sources and few memories and doesn't have a lot of research done. And remember to keep track of your research. I will include a template. I will send a template out as well as the YouTube channel link in an email for anybody who wants to just go ahead and like copy and use that template. If anybody's interested in that, don't feel like you have to, but this is how I do it. But keep track of your research. You can do it on notes or whatever, but it helps so that you don't come back later and redo all the work that you've already done. Also remember to look at the sources that are already attached and make sure that you get all the good information that is in them. Look at those images. Utilize that family search wiki so you know what to look for first and what needs to be done and what won't be found. Also, try to focus on your one person as best as you can. Try to avoid the rabbit hole until the basics are covered. So, for example, until I have my vital records, my birth, marriage, and death, and my censuses covered, it's going to be tempting to look at all these people, all of Dorothy and Dalton and all his children, and try and find all their information at the same time. And it's really easy to get confused that way. So just focus on your one person at once and then branch out to the family. Try and focus on one family group at once. So if I'm going to focus on Benjamin and his spouse and their children and that family, focus on that first before you focus on like all his siblings and parents. Try to keep track of your sources. Don't just attach things that are suggested and move on. Try to really pay attention to the information and don't just assume that because it's suggested it's correct. Try to find proof. And take time to standardize. It's worth it. It saves a lot of time. So if any of these places aren't standardized or any of these dates aren't standardized, the family search algorithm and the ancestry algorithm will have a hard time finding more records for you. So take time to put things in correctly and save it. Mark your reasons for adding things. And remember to try and find those census and vital records first if possible, and then use additional records to supplement. So there's no direct path for any one ancestor. There's no order that you have to stick to. as you can see with this guy, we kind of had to jump around on different records. We couldn't find him in on any all the censuses that we wanted to find, and it ended up being a draft card that helped figure it out. So be a little flexible, try and stick to what is important, but it's really just a lot of sleuthing. So as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me or message me at any time. You can call me. You can also talk to your family history consultants in your ward, and we would all